I'm really excited watching this current England team under Thomas Tuchel, and I think there's a chance that we could win the World Cup in 2026. And I know a lot of you watching have just rolled your eyes and gone, classic English optimism, overrating your team and overrating your players. It's only qualifying, who have you played, and the World Cup still ages away. And do you know what? I actually think you have a point on every single one of those. But I come back to you and say, yes, but you still have to win the games in qualifying. England have deserved to win every game in qualifying, and they've done it without conceding a single goal. So if I can't be optimistic about my country doing really well right now, then when can I be? And I think with a lot of football teams nowadays, it all comes top down, and it starts for me with Thomas Tuchel. And I know there was a lot of criticism around his appointment because of the fact that he wasn't English, the fact that he was a German, and the fact that it was just a short-term contract. But for me, there's a level of transparency there that we all know about the situation, and which we haven't always had. We know that he's going to be leaving at the end of the World Cup. We know he has one job, and that's to try and win the World Cup this year. And we know we're going to be shaking hands at the end of it, no matter what happens, and he's going to be departing. And I think it's a situation that has led for people to not question the manager's position anytime we lose to Senegal or we only beat Andorra 1-0. And I think it's actually been really refreshing from my part as a fan. And I think for Tuchel as well is refreshing because he doesn't have to think too long term. He doesn't have to worry about if I don't pick this young player or that one, or if I upset a few big names here or there. I'm doing whatever it takes to win the World Cup, and I'm going to do it my way because of the fact that it's going to be my team and it's going to be my reputation on the line. And the key word, the one word that everyone's been talking about with England since the golden generation, and I think Thomas Tuchel is now finally the first manager to put that into practice, and that's balance. Case in point, Elliot Anderson in the six for England. I think after his recent performances in that England shirt, playing alongside Declan Rice, who I think is a nailed-on starter in that midfield, Elliot Anderson has cemented himself to be going to that World Cup, barring an injury or a horrific run of form. And he's not the biggest name, he's not even the sexiest of names, it's just the fact that he's the midfielder that goes into the England team and does a job and does it really, really well. So it might mean that you have to play him and Declan Rice, and it means that maybe Cole Palmer, Jude Bellingham, maybe Phil Foden, none of them play, maybe Morgan Rogers plays because he's the one who's best suited towards the team. In my opinion, I actually don't mind who plays and who doesn't, as long as it's the players that come into the side and do the best for the team. What Elliot Anderson is able to do really, really well that Declan Rice just simply isn't able to do in the six, which is why I prefer him there over Rice, is the fact that he's able to come in deep, receive the ball on the half turn, and then drive forward, either with his carrying ability or to pass the ball. And it's not a criticism of Declan Rice. I think he's a fantastic player in an 8, but I don't think in the 6 that he's quite as good as doing it as Elliot Anderson is. And another player which Thomas Tuchel seems to really, really like in that number 10 position is actually Morgan Rogers, ahead of the likes of, like I've said, Bellingham, Palmer, Foden. Someone who can link up with Harry Kane, someone who can go past Kane when Kane decides to drop deep. And I think he's got the qualities to really shine and maybe show up at the World Cup. Again, he's not one of the biggest names in the whole squad, and he's going to be starting, if he does start, ahead of some of the other big names. But I'm absolutely fine with that because it's a player who works well with Kane and works well with the system that England are employing right now. So often the commentary around Harry Kane, especially at the last Euros, was the fact that he needs to stay higher up the pitch and stay away from dropping in deep into the midfield because he needs to be on the end of receiving the passes that England's brilliant creative players are going to be making for him. But it actually seems like Thomas Tuchel is flipping that thinking completely. Harry Kane is England's captain. He's our number 9 and he's arguably our best player. So instead of playing the other players to feed the ball to Kane, let Kane play his own game best. Let him drop in deep and then let him pass the ball out wide to those players making those runs and then get in the box later on for himself. And then that means that the other players need to be runners around him, not necessarily players who are creative and want the ball to feed. And we saw it plenty of times against Serbia. Harry Kane was dropping in deep in between the lines, sometimes to join the midfield line as well, and then passing the ball out wide to Saka on the right hand side because of the fact that Morgan Rogers had created the space by running in behind and still pinning back the centre backs. And if England continue to play like this, then it means that Phil Foden necessarily won't be playing on the left hand side, which I think we're all absolutely fine with considering how the last Euros went. But it might also mean that Bellingham, Palmer and Foden might have a tough time taking that number 10 position off Morgan Rogers. I think Bellingham is probably best suited to be playing this role and he might be a like-for-like swap with Morgan Rogers. But I think that Foden and Palmer are going to really struggle to get into this England side unless it might be on the right. But then you've still got Saka and Madueke who's out injured at the moment. And let's not forget Jarrod Bowen. So that England have a plethora of options and it's really nice for the manager to have those. And this is before we even come up to Trent Alexander-Arnold, who hasn't even been selected in this current England squad, who at the Euros, it was a bit of a nightmare, him playing in midfield. It wasn't a situation that suited him that very well. It was clearly Gareth Southgate just trying to get a very talented player in that England squad. I respect him for trying to do so, but it clearly didn't work, and something that England cannot be trying again at another major tournament. So where do you play Trent? Do you play him at right back ahead of Reece James? I really don't think so. I think Reece James has got that position absolutely on lockdown. And I think it's going to be, barring an injury, Reece James starting pretty much the entirety of that World Cup on that right-hand side. But to play devil's advocate, Trent Alexander-Arnold is such a supremely talented footballer. You can't possibly not take Trent Alexander-Arnold, can you? Well, actually, I think you can. And this whole thing around England of, oh, so-and-so has to start, so-and-so has to play, I don't subscribe to it whatsoever, if I'm being honest. I think England only have 3 players which absolutely have to start. And for me, that's Jordan Pickford in goal. I think that's Declan Rice. And for me, that Declan Rice is a number 8 position, not as a number 6. And it's Harry Kane. Everyone else, you might want to make an argument. You might want to make an argument for Saka, for John Stones, Mark Gay, Elliot Anderson, whoever it might be. I personally would have to disagree. I think the only ones who absolutely have to start every game at the World Cup, Jordan Pickford, Declan Rice, Harry Kane. Everyone else for me is by the by. It's you replace the player depending on the situation. And for me, I think it's great that England have so many options. So I think if a certain player isn't playing, I'm not too fussed about it, as long as England go out there and do the job. And I think that's something that I really hope that Tuchel continues to do between now and the World Cup and at the World Cup itself. And so when I think about what can change between now and the World Cup to ruin the mood that I'm in right now, the one where I'm really positive and I'm really eager to see the next England game rather than my own club team, I think to myself, it's us. It's us, the media, the fan media, the mainstream media, all the noise around England that comes with every single game and every single moment and highlight. I think the only thing that can ruin this feeling of goodwill right now is the media. And I think we're already starting to see it a little bit. And the player that the media circus has started around is Jude Bellingham. I think Jude Bellingham played really well against Albania. Do I think he was man of the match? Probably not. I thought it was Harry Kane with his 2 goals. But he got it, and I didn't blink twice about it, and I moved on with the rest of my evening. However, to then see the post-match press conference with Thomas Tuchel and see the first 3 questions all be about Bellingham and not about his performance in the game, rather than his supposed lack of celebration and then discontent with being taken off the pitch, I thought for me that was absolutely horrendous, and actually not even journalism at this point. England have a world-class 22-year-old midfielder on their hands, and everyone seems to be worried about, is he too arrogant, is he too much of a team player, rather than focusing on the fact that he's struggling to make the team because the player coming in for him in Morgan Rogers is playing so outstandingly well that a player like of the caliber of Jude Bellingham is going to have to work his way into the England squad. Surely that can only be a positive rather than a negative. But here we are, and we're talking about Jude Bellingham, and not even him. We're talking about the press around him in a negative way. So come the announcement of that World Cup squad, everyone, and I mean absolutely everyone, will be talking about it. So will I. So you make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to hear my thoughts on it when it does come out in a few months' time. And everyone will be talking about the players who aren't in the squad rather than the ones who are. If I asked you who number 24, 25 and 26 are in the World Cup squad, but if I asked you the 3 big names who weren't included, you could probably name the 3 big names rather than the ones who did make the squad. And I think that probably shows the problem that England have at the moment, and the only reason why I'm a little bit pessimistic when it comes to England, because in terms of the manager, in terms of the players, in terms of the football that we're playing right now, I'm absolutely ecstatic and I'm over the moon. And I'll just say it, I'm happy to be an England fan and I'm happy to be watching the team right now. So yes, I am excited for the World Cup. I think England have a fantastic chance. Do I think we'll win it? I hope so, but I don't know. I need to see the draw. I need to see the World Cup squad. I need to see what happens between now and then. But I do believe I have every right to be excited right now, and I think you should be too if you're an England fan.